And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have everybody here on this Tuesday, December 12th. We got a lot to talk about on the show today. But before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCsportsnetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, with that, let's get right into what we will discuss on the show for today. So, we'll start off the show. We'll recap both Monday night games from yesterday. And, it was upsets galore yesterday. So we'll get into that in a second. Then in the second part of the show, we're going to talk about some of the teams after Week 14 that I kind of look at as frauds now. And I don't like saying it for the teams that we'll talk about, but after this week, it kind of seems like that's the case. So we'll get into that. Then in the third part of the show, we're going to talk about the Browns picking up a win. Joe Flacco's first win with the Browns since taking over as, right now, the starting quarterback. So we'll get into that. And then in the final part of the show, we'll go over the current standings, how the playoff picture looks currently. And we will get into that at the end of the show for the last part. So let's get right into the first topic, which is talking about last night's games. So I'm pretty sure I did say, after I did my picks for the game, or who I was picking, I said do the opposite. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. Both underdogs won yesterday. I had the Giants on the big TV. I was following the Titans-Dolphins game on my phone because, I wanted to have the Giants game, on just because I'm a fan. And, I wanted that to be on the big TV. But, of course, I was paying attention to the Dolphins-Titans game because, I had some fantasy implications to go along with that. So let's get right into, let's see, which game should we, we'll get into the game that ended first. So we'll get into the Giants and the Packers game first. So the Giants were 6-point underdogs in this game. I didn't expect them to win. I thought they would kind of fall back down to earth, after, winning their previous two games. But that was not the case last night. The Giants surprised me in how they performed last night. Jordan Love, who was coming in playing really good football, the best football of his career, they held him to 218 yards passing, one touchdown, one pick. He went 25 of 39. And the Packers, messy game, turning the ball over. He fumbled. Also, Keyshawn Nixon on a punt return, he fumbled. He muffed the punt. It was a messy game for the Packers, but the Giants' defense, they played really well, I thought, last night. And they almost lost the game, but they were still able to come out with the win. And we'll go through the game summary. So the Packers, they punted on their first possession. Then the Giants punted. Packers punted. Then the Giants missed a field goal. And then the Packers went 7 plays, 62 yards, 3 minutes, 51 seconds of time of possession down the field. And Jaden Reed, which they love to do this, he scored a 16-yard rushing touchdown. It was on like those end arounds that they like to do. And he scored, so that put the Packers up 7-0. And then the Giants on their drive, they went 8 plays, 75 yards, 4 minutes, 6 seconds of time of possession. That was set up by a 32-yard rush by Wan'Dale Robinson, who had a good game, and Saquon Barkley scored a 5-yard rushing touchdown to tie the game at 7. Then the Packers on their next possession, they fumbled. Jordan Love fumbled, and this was in Giants territory. Then the Giants turned over on downs, and then Jordan Love threw a pick, which then led to a Giants punt. Packers kicked a field goal, and it was 10-7 at the half. And actually, I believe both games were 10-7 at the half, which was really strange. Then the Giants punted, and then they scored a touchdown on their next drive. They scored a touchdown on the next drive. Saquon Barkley scored a touchdown from 1 yard out to make it 14-10. Packers then punted. Then they kicked a field goal. 32-yard field goal by Carlson, who actually missed another field goal later in the game. So it was 14-13. Then the Giants scored a touchdown to put them up by 8. Tommy DeVito connected with Isaiah Hodgins for an 8-yard touchdown reception. That was a great play to put them up by 8. Packers then missed a field goal. Then they kicked a field goal in the fourth quarter to make it 21-16. And then this is where it looked like up here, another tough Giants loss. So Saquon Barkley ran for 34 yards, and then he falls down, was not touched, and then the ball pops out. Packers pick it up. They run it back. They reviewed it, and so it was a fumble, clearly a fumble. And then the Packers, they turned that into a touchdown. Jordan Love connected with Heath for a 6-yard touchdown. They didn't get the 2. And then the Giants, 8 plays, 57 yards, a minute and 33 seconds of time in possession, got into field goal range, and Randy Bullock kicked a 37-yard field goal to win the game, and the Giants win 24-22. They get to 5-8. Packers drop to 6-7. Tommy DeVito went 17-21, 158 yards passing, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. The Giants ran the ball for over 200 yards. Packers struggle against the run. Barkley had 86 yards on the ground with 2 touchdowns. The 34-yard run that he had that led to the fumble that definitely, brought up his rushing yards. Tommy DeVito had 10 carries for 71 yards. So, he was doing damage in the running game as well. He only passed the ball for 158 yards, but, made some plays with his legs too. Almost scored a rushing touchdown. And I think that was right before the Saquon Barkley 1-yard touchdown. Wan'Dale Robinson had a good game. He had 36 yards rushing, but he also had 79 yards receiving. Isaiah Hodgins had a touchdown in the game. Giants get the win. They've won 3 in a row now, and they're still technically in it. A lot of teams are 6-7. They're 5-8. They play the Saints next week, which is a very winnable game. I don't look at the Saints and say, they're going to walk all over the Giants. The Giants' defense is playing really well, and the Saints, they haven't been that good this year. So, the Giants could definitely win that game. The problem is they should have stacked some of the wins earlier in the season because they're going to have to beat the Eagles twice, and they're going to have to beat the Rams. So those are going to be tough games. But you know what? At least, sorry, dogs barking, of course. But anyways, they got some games that they got to win though because it's going to be tough down the stretch with what they got going on. Playing the Eagles twice, the Rams. But I think they could beat the Saints. So credit to them for getting the win. Packers dropped to 6-7. They did not play a good game last night. But I think it was a little bit of both because Jordan Love did miss throws, but Giants defense played well. I think credit to them and how they showed up. So, so that's what happened in that game. Then we got the Dolphins and the Titans. So, what can I say about this game? So the Titans, they have not won a road game this season. They've played very bad on the road. So you thought, okay, well the Dolphins, they should crush them in this game. And that was not the case. The Titans flat out won this game. Now part of the reason is because Tyreek Hill got hurt in this game, dealt with an ankle injury. He got his leg caught underneath a player who was making a tackle on him. And you just held your breath because you were like, this is not good for the Dolphins, and he was able to run off the field. He did make a couple of plays later in the game. He actually came back into the game, and it looked like, it was going to be a lot worse than what it was. He says it's still hurting, so it's something that he's been dealing with all year. So, but you know what? He's been banged up a couple times during games, and he's been able to bounce back from him. So this was just another case of that. So we'll see what his status is throughout the week. But once Tyreek Hill got hurt, this was a completely different game. The Dolphins really just couldn't, generate a lot of offense. They cashed in on a lot of the Titans' mistakes. Will Levis threw a pick trying to set up a screen to Tajay Spears, and that made it 7-0 Dolphins. Then the Titans tied the game to make it 7-7. Well, in the beginning of the game, Dolphins were driving, and then they fumbled. Tua fumbled. There was a botched snap. Then Tua picked it up, and then he got the ball knocked out, and the Titans recovered. But then Will Levis threw a pick six. Both teams punted. Then the Titans went 14 plays, 86 yards down the field, over 7 minutes of time possession. Derrick Henry scored a rushing touchdown to tie the game. Then the Dolphins had a blocked field goal against them. Both teams punted. And the Titans were winning 10-7 at the half. Then the Dolphins tied at 10-10. Both teams punted again. Titans kicked another field goal. Then the Dolphins kicked a field goal to make it 13-13. Both teams punted. Then the Dolphins got a touchdown. Raheem Mostert scored a touchdown from 3 yards out to make it 20-13. And then the Titans fumbled on their next possession. Literally the first play, Will Levis fumbled. And then the Dolphins went up 27-13, and you thought the game was over, right? Nope. The Titans then went 9 plays, 75 yards, about 2 minutes of time of possession down the field. Levis connected with DeAndre Hopkins for a 3-yard touchdown. Dolphins punted, and then the Titans, again, down the field. Big play set up. Will Levis connected with DeAndre Hopkins for 36 yards. And then Derrick Henry from 3 yards out scored a touchdown later in the drive to put them up by 1. Dolphins turned it over on downs, and the Titans got the win. I mean, you thought when the Dolphins were up 14 that the game was over. But Dolphins defense collapsed in this game. And the Titans get to 5-8, Dolphins drop to 9-4. And you could look at Tyreek Hill getting injured as, one of the reasons why they just did not play well. But yeah, it was not a good game for them. And yeah, unfortunately Tua kind of got exposed a little bit, and that wasn't good. That was not good to see. And we're going to talk about them, in the next segment, but I couldn't believe it. Big chunk plays. I thought, they were covering. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, all right, so maybe we got this. But then, the Titans are driving, and I'm like, all right, well, we're not going to get the cover, but the Dolphins are still probably going to win. No, the Titans got the ball back, and then they went down and scored again. And they won. So this was a bad loss for the Dolphins. And, yeah, without Tyreek Hill, this offense just looked completely different. And, yeah, we'll see what happens. He was able to come back in the game, but they got tough games coming up on the schedule. They got the Cowboys, they got the Bills, they got the Ravens. They got the Jets next week, and the Jets just came off of a big win. And, they got a good defense. And, listen, they're going to look to try to redeem themselves from, the embarrassment that happened on Black Friday. So, we'll see how that goes. But, yeah, the Dolphins got a lot of tough games coming up. So they could very easily, lose some of these games. And, yeah, the division's still kind of up for grabs. Because they keep, if the Bills can continue to win games and the Dolphins continue to lose games, suddenly, that last game might mean something again. Because I said that game could come down to that game could decide the division. And, with the Bills struggling, it didn't look like that was the case. But now it might be. Because, they were a whole different team without Tyreek Hill. And listen, you got to surround your quarterback with talent to also make them successful. But there's also the quarterbacks that are able to elevate, the players around them, and they could work with anybody and be successful. And with Tua, getting Tyreek Hill definitely made him a better quarterback. But without him, yeah, he looked a lot different, and that's where he's going to start getting criticism. So, so upsets galore last night. Big win for the Giants. At least, it hurts their draft positioning, but at least they're not going to have like this, one of their worst seasons ever. They've been competitive. They've been winning games. So credit to them. And for the Titans, yeah, that was a much-needed victory for them. For the Packers, they still have a soft schedule to finish the year, so they could still make one of these wild cards. But for the Dolphins, yeah, they got a tough schedule. And they're still going to be a playoff team, but, we'll see where they end up because that was a bad loss for them. So with that, we're going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we will then discuss the teams that are fraudulent. So we'll continue to talk about the Dolphins and another team as well that I unfortunately might have to give them the label as being fraudulent. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.